Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to the another video, and in this video we are going to talk about JSON or JSON. Whatever you like to pronounce, I will be using JSON. It is one of the important concepts you should learn if you are a programmer or a web developer. We will see what JSON is, how to write and use them in our projects. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you everything about JSON that you need to know in a very simplified way. If this sounds interesting, then watch the video till the end. Also make sure you subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. Alright, let's start with the simple question, what is JSON? So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, very similar to JavaScript Object Literals, and also it is the subset of JavaScript. It is the data representation format like XML and YAML, but it is popular because of its lightweight and less size as compared to the XML for data interchange. JSON is self-describing, and that is the reason it is easy to read and write JSON. Unlike XML, we don't have to deal with lots of closing and opening tags. JSON is widely used over the internet for exchanging data between client and server in the form of APIs, and also used for configs in various text editors like Visual Studio Code, Sublime, etc. JSON also supports and integrates with almost all languages. So it is language independent, and most languages have JSON parser. Let's see what are the types of the data that JSON can represent. As we know that JSON is a data representation format. JSON natively supports strings, and you can see the values as and wrapped in a double quotes, hello world and the page. It also supports numbers, and you can use whole numbers, integers, decimals, negative numbers, and it also supports scientific notation numbers. Next data type we have the booleans, and the booleans can take either true or false as the value. Next data type are the arrays. So arrays are the ordered list starting the index with 0. So in the first array you can see 1, 2, 3. It's an array of numbers, and the second one is HTML, CSS and JavaScript. It is an array of strings, and it is enwrapped with a square brackets. Next data type we have the objects, and objects are the most complex data type to represent but most useful, and you represent objects with a key and a value pair enclosed in the curly braces. So in the example you can see that we have a double quotes name, and there is a colon, and then we again have a double quotes and value as a string. The next data type is the null, and null usually we use when we want to represent the empty values or the null values. So in order to write a valid JSON, there are certain rules that we need to take care of. The first one is the JSON file should always end with the .json as file extension. You can see in the example we have users.json. Next, you always represent a data in JSON as key and a value pair, where you enclose the key with a double quotes and represents the value with one of the valid data type that we saw in the previous slide. Next, you separate multiple data with commas in the end, and curly braces holds objects while the square braces holds array. Let's take a look how a JSON file looks like with an example JSON data. Alright, so first we start with a pair of curly braces. Next, let's add a string value into it. I am using name as a key enclosed in the double quotes separated by a colon between value, and now the value is a string. So we will use a double quotes to represent string. Now I have added age, and the value of the age will be a number data type. Similarly, I can add a boolean as is programmer. So is programmer is the key, and the value is a boolean data type. And this person has a skills. So these skills are represented by an array of strings. So we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as the skills, and these are enwrapped with the square brackets. So it is an array of strings. And the last we have an address, which is represented by an object and have city and state as the key and the values Mumbai and MH. All right, so now let's jump into the code and let's see some of the examples. All right, guys, so now I have a simple HTML document here, and the next thing we are going to do is we need to create a JSON file. So what I'm going to do, I will create a new file and I will name it as users.json. So make sure if you want to create a JSON file, you need to give an extension of .json. So in my Visual Studio Code, you can see that when I add the .json extension, I automatically get an icon with the curly braces that represents that it is a JSON file. All right. So now in the JSON file, if you want to write a valid JSON, and you start with a pair of curly braces. So you can see that now I have a pair of curly braces. I will just zoom it a little bit so that you can see it more nice. And the next thing is we need to have a key and a value as a pair. So how we do, we have a double quotes, we have a key, we have a colon, and then we have in the double quotes, we have the value. And if we want to have the multiple keys, then we separate it with a comma, and then we write again a new key and we give a again new value. So this is a valid JSON. So let's create the user here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give a name and the value would be the page, Malvia. Okay. And then I'm going to give an age, and the age would be a number. So we will not be having a double quotes here. So I will simply write 29. Okay. Next, I want to give the a Boolean data type. So I'm going to give a new key and I will write is programmer and I'm going to write a true as value. All right. You can also recall that this is very similar to the JavaScript object. So let's see what happens if we don't give the quotes here, then it is going to give an error. So if I hover it here, you can see that the property keys must be double quoted. If it's a JSON, then the key should be double quoted. So it will not accept if you don't put the double quotes. It's going to give you an error. So this is also a valid JavaScript object. So what I can do is I can go to my HTML file, and in the HTML file I can show you something how actually you can access the keys and the values. So I'm going to have a script tag here. Okay, and I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to create a constant user, and I'm going to use the same object here. So if I use the same object, you can see that I don't get any errors, and this can be treated as a simple object literal. And now if I want to access this, I will just write a console.log and I'm going to add user, and let's see what actually we get when we console log the user. So to see the console log, I'm going to do a inspect element, and in the inspect element, I'm going to click on the console section. I'll just zoom this for you so that you can see it more nice. All right. So now you can see that I have printed that object name is programmer and age as the properties and the values. And now if I want to access the name, I just need to do dot and then I can actually have the values. So if I do a dot, you can see that I'm getting suggestions of age is programmer and name. So let me have a name here. And if I save it, I actually get the name value. And if I need is programmer, then it's going to give me a true. So this is a very simple JSON. So let's add some more values to it. I'm going to add skills. So the skills would be an array, and it's giving me error because I haven't put the double quotes here. So I'll add double quotes, and here I'm going to have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right, and I'm also going to add address. So the address is an object and the key is city. In the city, I'm going to add Mumbai. Okay, and the state. And for the state, I'm going to add MH. All right, let me add country as well. So I'm going to add country, and the country will be India. All right, then I will save it. And now we will try to access this whole object here again. So let me copy and paste it here. All right. So now let's see the what we get in the user. So we get the whole object again in the user. And this time, if I want to access the skills, I'm going to do a dot, and we can have skills. And if I access the skills, I'm going to get the complete array. And if I need to access a particular item in the array, I can access it with the index. So if I do the index 0, I'm going to get HTML. If I do index 1, I'm going to get CSS. And this way you can also add access the address. So if we do the address, and then we can add dot and then city. So if we add the city, we are going to get Mumbai. And if we change it to country, then we are going to get India. All right, guys. So this is what we have done, that we have actually taken the complete JSON into a JavaScript variable, and then we are trying to display it. But let's use the JSON data directly using a fetch API. So what I'm going to do, I will just remove this for now. Okay. And then we are going to do a fetch. So you can use a fetch or the Ajax call to make a call and get the data, which actually you are going to do when you actually build the projects. So you need to call an API and fetch the data from the server. And after fetching the data from the server, you actually display that data on your UI or on your HTML. So we are going to call the users dot JSON, and I need to add the quotes here. Okay, and this is going to return me a promise. Then I'm going to add a response, and this response will give me a, I need to get the JSON of it. So I'll do a dot JSON, and this is going to give me a promise again, and this will have a JSON. Okay, and then I will just print the users here. All right, so I'm going to print the JSON here, and I will save it. So now you can see that we get the same object, but this time we are not hard coding it on our in our JavaScript code. We actually call the JSON, and if you want to see that, then we can go to the network, and in the network, let me refresh this. Let me zoom out. That you can see that there is actually in a call, and the call and the type is fetch, and actually it is fetching the data. So in the headers you can see that I have made a get call, and using the get call I am getting back the data, and the type of the data is the application JSON. So here you can see that it's an application JSON, so it's going to give me a JSON data. And if I go here and if I preview, or in the response, you can see I have a complete response. But this is a single user object, but in real life I will not be getting a single user object. I will be getting a list of users. So let's create a list of users. To create a list of users, I still going to be having a object first, starting from a pair of curly braces, and the key would be users, and it will be an array because it's going to hold a multiple users, and each user will be type of an object. So I am going to have multiple users here, and let me have, this is my first user, and I will just take this data and I put this data here. All right, so now you can see that this is a single user block. So now this way we can create multiple users. So let me add one more user to here. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to add one more user. I'm going to change the value to Nikesh. I'm going to change this Gadekar, and he's also a programmer and he knows databases. So I'm going to the DB2, and here I'm going to do MongoDB and JavaScript, and he lives in Delhi, and this will become DL, and it's India. And let me add one more user. So we will have three users, and this will become Amit, and this will become Dubey, and I will change the age to 32. Let me make this as false, and he don't have any of the skills, so this is going to be an empty array. All right, so now we have three users, and now let's fetch these three users in our HTML or in our JavaScript code. So I'm going to save it. If I go to the console, you can see that now I have a user as a key, and the value of the users is the array itself. And now if I expand this, I'm going to get three items in it, and the first one is actually an object, the second is an object, and third is an object. So it is an array of objects, and each object you can actually see the address and all things. So now if you want to access this, what are you going to do? You can going to do dot, you're going to use users. If I do users, I'm going to get all the users. And now if I want to access the first user, then I'm going to have the index first, and we have the first user. And in the first user, if I want to access the address, I'm going to do a dot again, and I'm going to do address, and I will get the address. And similarly, you can get using the dot. So if you want to traverse your JSON and get the values, you need to use dot, and using the dot you can actually traverse your JSON object. So let me print all the usernames. So what I'm going to do, I will just create a UL, an empty list, and in the empty list what I'm going to do, so we are going to loop first. So we have a JSON dot users dot for each. Okay, and in the for each I'm going to have an individual user, and once I get the individual user, what I'm going to do is I will create a variable here. So let me create a let list is equals to empty, and I am going to give a list plus equals to, I'm going to create a string literal using backtick, and I'm going to give an li. And inside the li, what I actually want the user dot. So let me get the user name. Okay, and then I'm going to close this li again. All right, and after that what I want to do, I want to do a document using query selector. So document.get query selector, and I'm going to give the ul, and then I will add the inner HTML. So if you don't know this document.query selector and inner HTML, please check out my JavaScript crash course. So you will learn all these JavaScript stuffs in my crash course. So inner HTML, and that inner HTML will be equals to my list. All right, and if I save it, then I actually picked the names from my JSON, and then I have displayed those values in my, so this doesn't match actually. This should be JSON user list. So what I'm going to do, I'll just change this to user. Okay, so this is the users list. And one thing I want to show you here is that sometimes what happens actually, you send the data in the form of a JSON string, so you need to stringify your complete JSON. And how that you can do is, let me show you how you can do that. All right, so I will just comment this out for now. We don't want this now. Okay. And I will just create a new list here. So I will have a users here. Okay. And in the users, I'm going to use this complete object. So I will copy and I will paste this here. All right. And now if I do a console dot log users, then I'm going to get the complete user array. All right, now this is the object which we have in our JavaScript code. We need to send this object to the server, and server is expecting it not in form of an object, it expecting a string, a JSON string. So how you convert this object into a JSON string? So you just need to add what I'm going to do. You can use JSON dot stringify, and then you can pass actually what object you need to stringify. And if I save this now, then you can get this actually this complete string. And if you want to see that this is a JSON or not, then let's see, you can go to JSON editor. Okay, and I'm going to paste this here. I'll just increase this. And now if I copy this, then you can see that this actually it's an object. And this string you actually send it to the server, and when the server gives you a response back, you are actually going to get this whole string back. But you cannot use this string to display the value. You need to convert this string into the JavaScript object. So how you can convert this back, and I will show you so how you can convert this back. So now I have this string, and if you want to convert this string back, so I'm going to take a user string. So I'm assuming that this user string I received back from my server. Okay, so now I have this complete string, and now what I need to do, that I have received this string from the server, I need to convert this into my JavaScript object. So in that case, what you can do, you can use, instead of stringify, this time you will use parse. So I'm going to use parse, and inside the parse I'm going to give my user string, and I'm going to save it. Now you can see that the actual string is converted back to the JavaScript object, and now using this JavaScript object you can actually loop through and you can display the data on the screen. So this stringify and the parse are two important functions which you need to remember, because these will be the most widely used when actually you build the projects. All right, I'm going to show you one more thing. So let me get rid of all these stuff. We don't want these stuff anymore. So we are back to our fetch code, and you can see that we have actually displayed the list. So now I'm going to do a real API call to show you how you can test. So there is one website called JSON Placeholder. So let me increase this. Uh, so this website is a JSON placeholder. It gives you the fake APIs. You can actually do some testing of your code, and you can get the JSON, you can display the JSON, and you can play around. So it has a lot of resources. It has posts, comments, albums, photos, to-dos. So let's use this to-do and let's get all the data. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this URL. Okay, and I'm going to use the URL here. All right. And this to-do URL is going to return me the list of all the to-dos. So let me console this list of to-dos first. So I'm going to console the whole thing here, and I will just do a comment here. All right. And now if I save it, then I get the list of all the to-dos. And this is the actual to-dos we are getting from the server. So if we go to the network tab, then you can see that then there is an API call to the JSON placeholder, and in the JSON placeholder, all right, so you get all the data here. Now let's create this to-do list. So what I'm going to do is I am going to change this to to-dos. Okay, so this will become a to-do list again. All right, and this time what we are going to do is I don't want this, and it will be JSON dot, let's see what actually it is. So I'll go into the console, and it's going to give me an array. So it will be JSON dot for each, and for each to do we need to have to do dot, let's display the title only. So to-dos have a title, and we will display the title of the to-dos. So let me add here. And if I save, then you can see these are the list of to-dos. So this is a long list of the to-dos. All right, guys, so this is all about the JSON. You know how to stringify JSON, you know how to parse JSON, you know how to send the JSON to the server, you know how to get the data back from the server, and you also know how actually you display the data on the screen. So I hope you liked the video and you understood everything about JSON. If you have any questions, you can put in the comments. I will answer you promptly. And I hope you like the video. A thumbs up is appreciated. You can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. I will add the links in the description below. And guys, don't forget to subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you can see these cool videos, web development, and you can learn the web development as quickly as possible and in a very simplified way. Thanks for watching.